In this video, I'm going to take you through my first year in business as a freelance copywriter. I'm going to be covering how much I earned, how I landed my first clients, and the biggest mistakes I made in the first 12 months. So let's get into it. So a few years ago, I had never actually heard of copywriting. I've never heard that term before. I didn't know what a copywriter did. So I was first introduced to it actually via a Facebook ad. I saw an ad for like a $5 ebook, and it talked about, how to make money as a freelance copywriter. So I bought the book and I read it, and I thought, yeah, that sounds interesting. That sounds like something I could do because I've always been sort of a natural writer, but it's not something I've ever sort of pursued super seriously. But yeah, I read the book and I was like, I could probably do that. Then I did nothing really. About 6 months passed. I think I did like a course or two on Udemy, and they were just sort of very sort of general overviews of copywriting. Like it wasn't super in depth. And, I went through the course, like I made up some samples, and like if I looked at them now, they would just make me cringe. Like they were pretty rubbish. And so, yeah, I didn't really start trying to find clients or anything like that for a good 6 months after I learnt about copywriting. So then we get to March 2020, and we all know what happens in that month. And because I was working in hospitality, I was, my job was like first on the chopping block. So yeah, I found myself at home, unemployed. And, I had a lot of time on my hands. So I thought, all right, I'm going to give copywriting like a serious go. I'm going to try and actually get some clients. So that was when I first started taking it seriously. And so what I did was I took a couple more in-depth courses. I learnt about sales pages. I learnt about email campaigns, different sorts of, email campaigns that you can write for clients. And then I started pitching on Upwork. So I created an Upwork profile, and I also started cold emailing clients as well. And I'll be honest, like the first couple of weeks that I was pitching, I would feel physically sick to my stomach. Like I just had so much like imposter syndrome, and I was like, oh, who the hell am I to be, calling myself a writer? Like, I've never done this before. I've only done, some online courses, it's not like I have a university degree or anything like that. And yeah, it was, it was difficult to put myself out there and, actively seek out clients. But it didn't take long to get my first client, actually. It was about 2 weeks after I started pitching that I landed my first client. And she had me help her with an email sequence for a launch of a course she was doing. And we made $10,000 in, a week with my emails. So I was pretty, all right, okay. Maybe I've got something here. Maybe I actually do know more than what I think I do. So that sort of really sort of bolstered my initial confidence, and it helped to sort of get rid of that, feeling like I was, swindling people, out of their money by calling myself a writer when I had no sort of track record yet. So yeah, I got my first client, and from there, it sort of just snowballed. And, I took on some other jobs on Upwork, and, they weren't good paying jobs. Like, yeah, they were pretty shit actually. But, it was good just to sort of get the ball rolling, get a few testimonials. And from there, it started to become much easier to get more clients. So another thing that I really struggled with in my first few months of working as a freelance copywriter was receiving feedback, because, this was my first sort of real business venture, and, I'm not used to receiving criticism or feedback on my writing. So You know, the first time you get it, the first few times you get, you know, not so good feedback, it does sting a bit and it can bring up that imposter syndrome again. And, you know, the other thing I found was I had a tendency to sort of bite back when I received feedback that I didn't necessarily agree with. So that was another, you know, major sort of mistake that I made early on, was, you know, talking back and clapping back at clients, and it just made me look unprofessional. And it never ended well. It's not like they came around and be like, oh my God, yes, Rachel, you're so right. Like, you know, they're business owners. This is their business. They have, you know, final say in whatever writing they want. They know what they want. So just because I don't necessarily agree doesn't mean that, you know, they're not right. So that was, yeah, one of the big lessons was like clearly communicating with clients, and, you know, if I didn't agree with something that they said, giving a reason why I don't agree. And then, but saying, you know, at the end of the day, this is your business, so it's your call, but I want to just let you know that this is why I don't think that might not be, you know, a good move. So yeah, that was a big learning curve, was communication with clients. The other thing that I really struggled with in the beginning was getting vague briefs. Now, vague briefs drive me absolutely nuts. And, you know, I've gotten a lot better at asking for what I need up front now, but occasionally I still do get, a vague brief from a client, and it just makes it difficult to know what it is they want from you. And sometimes the client doesn't know themselves what they want, so they can't ask for what they don't know. So, getting all the information you need before you start writing anything is critical, because otherwise you just end up spending so much more time on a project than you need to. And if you're charging a fixed price for the project, then it can quickly become not worth the money that you're getting if you have to do 20 revisions. So yes, vague briefs, I can spot them now and I do not accept them. I always push for more information before I get started on a project. Now, the other thing that I struggled with a bit in my first year was pricing. So I knew that I wasn't, I didn't have the experience to charge thousands and thousands of dollars per project. But at the same time, I was charging fixed rates for projects without having the experience to know how long a project would take. So with my pricing in the beginning, like, things were all over the place. Like, sometimes I would be paid a really good amount of money for work that didn't take me very long at all to do. And then other times I would, vastly underestimate how long the project was going to take. And I would end up working for like a couple of dollars an hour, like, it felt like. So yeah, that's another thing. But that's something you can't really figure out until you're doing projects and, and working with clients. You don't know how long something's going to take you. You don't know how long, a project or a task is going to take you in the beginning until you start actually doing the work. So that's something that's kind of unavoidable. Now, another thing that was a real struggle in the first year of my business was juggling my clients and working in my job. So when I first started my business, we were in lockdown, so I had all the time in the world. But a couple of months afterwards, in Australia, we all went back to work. So I then found myself working full time, as well as juggling client work in the hours that I had off. So I quite quickly became burnt out and very overwhelmed, to the point where I would look at my to-do list for the week and just end up in tears because I had taken on too much work. And, burnout is good in a way because you get to know what your limits are. But it's very shit when you're going through it. So when you're starting out as a freelance writer, you want to say yes to every project. Like, you want to get as much experience as you can, as quickly as you can. But, if you don't manage your time well, if you take on more projects than you should, then you end up delivering subpar work essentially. So you're not really doing yourself a favor by taking on every single project. So it was a bit of a learning curve, but again, you know, I slowly learnt what my limits were. I learnt to say no to certain projects when I knew I couldn't do it to a good standard, or I said yes, but you know, I added on an extra week, like, okay, I'll get it back to you in 2 weeks' time, instead of saying yes, I'll get it to you by Friday. So that was another way I was able to get over that burnout and start managing my time better while I was still working in hospitality. Now, how much did I earn? Well, drum roll please. So in my first year of working as a copywriter, I earned a grand total of $18,000. Now, this isn't amazing money, but you know, I was still working full-time in hospitality. So I would say this is, you know, much more than I've made in any other little business venture of mine. So I was quite happy with those results. And every year since then, I've, you know, more than doubled what I made the previous year. So yeah, it's, you know, it's pretty good for side hustle income. I mean, what would you, oh, there's like a bird like looking through the window at me. So yeah, $18,000, certainly nothing to sniff at. And especially during, you know, pandemic times when lots of people are losing work. So I was, yeah, pretty happy with that. And yeah, pretty good for my first year, I thought. So to sum up, my first year in business, it was all about, you know, building confidence in my skills as a writer, learning, you know, how to communicate effectively and get what I need from the clients, and, you know, just figuring out how long projects take me so that I can price my services effectively. So yeah, it was a big year of learning, you know, not thousands and thousands of dollars, you know, it's $18,000 total, which I still thought was pretty good for working full-time as well. So yeah, that was my first year in business. So now I would love to hear from you. Do you have any questions about starting a career as a freelance writer? If so, just drop a comment in the video. I'll also leave some links to some related videos and some other content that you might want to check out. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.